Let me ask you a question that most people are too afraid to face. What if I told you that everything you've been told about love, relationships, and companionship was a lie? What if the pursuit of romance, the endless search for the one, was not the path to fulfillment, but a distraction, a beautifully wrapped illusion designed to keep you tethered, dependent, and weakened? They say a man is incomplete without a partner, that solitude is a curse, that to be alone is to be broken. But what if solitude is not a curse, but a gift? A secret weapon known only to those who dare to walk alone. There is a power, a rare, untamed force that belongs only to the man who stands apart from the crowd. The man who chooses himself over illusions. The man who, instead of searching for completion in another, turns inward and carves himself into something greater than anyone ever imagined. This is not a path for the weak. This is the path of the lone wolf. The path of the great minds, the warriors, the philosophers, the men who shaped history, not by following but by stepping away. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, not with love in his arms, but with wisdom in his mind. Nietzsche believed that to become who you truly are, you must be willing to stand alone. And Epictetus, a man born a slave, found true freedom not in others but in himself. And today, you are going to discover the 6 hidden benefits of being without a relationship. 6 truths that society doesn't want you to know. Because a man who is truly alone is a man who is truly free. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Every like, subscribe, helps us continue our mission of sharing knowledge. And leave a comment below and share your opinion on these benefits, or tell me which one resonates with you the most. Ready to unlock more wisdom? Let's get started. Benefit 1. Unbreakable self-mastery. There is a moment in every man's life when he must confront himself in total silence. No distractions, no noise, just him and the weight of his own existence. Most men never reach this moment because they never allow themselves to be alone. They seek relationships, companionship, and constant external validation, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of facing themselves. But the man who walks alone, who embraces solitude instead of fearing it, unlocks something rare. He steps onto a path that few dare to tread, the path of self-mastery. For centuries, the greatest minds in philosophy, war, and leadership have understood that solitude is not a punishment but a forge, a sacred space where the strongest men are molded. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, ruled over millions, yet understood the necessity of being alone. He wrote his deepest thoughts in meditations, not for the world, but for himself. He knew that only by mastering one's mind could one master the world. And yet, in today's world, we are told the opposite. We are told that fulfillment comes from another person, that happiness is found in a partner, that our time should be spent seeking, chasing, pleasing, and adjusting for someone else. But this is a lie, designed to keep men weak, dependent, and distracted. When you remove relationships from your life, you are left with something most men never experience: yourself. For the first time, you stand alone with your thoughts. Every flaw, every weakness, every insecurity rises to the surface, demanding to be confronted. There is no one to blame, no one to hide behind, no one to fill the empty space with temporary comfort. And this is where the transformation begins. In solitude, a man learns discipline. Without the distractions of romance, he can devote himself fully to his craft, his purpose, and his growth. He wakes up early not to please someone else, but to sharpen his mind. He trains his body, not for admiration, but for strength. He refines his skills, his knowledge, his philosophy, not to impress, but to evolve. In solitude, a man discovers mental clarity. Away from the noise of relationships, from emotional turbulence, from the constant negotiations and compromises, he can finally think with precision. He sees his goals with sharpness, his purpose with intensity, his destiny with certainty. He no longer operates on impulse, on emotion, on fleeting desires. He operates with cold, calculated wisdom. And in solitude, a man develops emotional control. Love, lust, heartbreak, these are the forces that have unraveled even the greatest of men. Kings have fallen, warriors have been tamed, empires have crumbled because of the distractions of the heart. But the man who masters solitude is not ruled by these forces. He becomes a fortress, unmoved by the storms of emotion, untouched by the weaknesses that consume ordinary men. Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, was once a slave. He had no wealth, no power, no privilege. But he had one thing, his mind. And he understood that the only true freedom is the ability to control oneself. He taught that the only thing a man truly owns is his own thoughts, his own actions, his own discipline. A man who is a slave to his emotions is no different from a slave in chains. When you are alone, you train yourself to be your own master. This is why so many men fear solitude, because to be alone means to face the truth. And most men are terrified of the truth about themselves. They would rather escape into relationships, into meaningless romance, into distractions that keep them from ever confronting their weaknesses. But the man who embraces solitude, who does not run from it, who uses it as a weapon, he becomes unbreakable. He does not chase, he does not beg, he does not need, he simply is. And in this state he becomes something more than a man. He becomes a force. The world will try to tell you that you need love to be whole, that you need a partner to be happy, that your life is incomplete without someone else to share it with. But remember this, the greatest men in history did not seek completion in others. They found it within themselves. Self-mastery is the first and most important benefit of walking alone. It is the foundation upon which all greatness is built, and the only way to achieve it is through solitude. Are you ready for the next truth? Then let's continue. Benefit 2. Absolute freedom. A man in a relationship is never truly free. His time is not fully his own, his choices are not made solely for himself, and his mind is constantly occupied with the emotions, needs, and expectations of another. Even in the best relationships, there is always compromise, always an unspoken contract of sacrifice. But the man who walks alone, he owns himself completely. He is bound by nothing. He wakes up and sleeps on his own terms. He moves through life without asking for permission, without considering another's expectations, without adjusting his vision to accommodate someone else's desires. Freedom is the most precious thing a man can possess. It is the essence of power, the foundation of greatness, the rarest currency in a world where most men willingly surrender it for comfort. Society tells you that to be a man means to commit, to settle down, to merge your existence with another's. But look closely. How many men in relationships are truly free? How many live with complete control over their own destiny? The answer is few, if any. A relationship by its very nature requires limitation. A man must be available. A man must prioritize another's feelings. A man must weigh every decision not just by his own desires, but by how it will affect someone else. This is not freedom. This is a cage, a comfortable one perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions." And what greater ambition is there than the pursuit of absolute freedom? To live unchained, to move without restriction, to shape one's own path without interference. Relationships demand negotiation. They require that you balance your goals against another's. They introduce obligations, responsibilities, and restrictions that may seem small at first, but over time, they accumulate until you find yourself living a life dictated by factors beyond your control. But the man who stands alone answers to no one. His ambitions are not diluted by compromise. His desires are not reshaped to fit the mold of a relationship. He is free to chase greatness without hesitation, without guilt, without resistance. He does not wake up wondering if his choices will disappoint someone. He does not hold himself back to maintain peace in a relationship. He does not delay his dreams because they do not align with another's timeline. Freedom is not simply about physical movement, it is about mental and emotional sovereignty. A free man does not wait for approval. He does not seek validation. He does not feel the constant pressure to be enough for someone else, because he already is enough for himself. This is the secret that most men never realize. You do not need another person to complete you. You are always complete. Nietzsche wrote, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." A man in a relationship is never fully in command of himself. He must obey the rules of the relationship. He must adjust to the emotions of his partner. He must be careful with his words, his actions, his plans. But a man without a relationship has no master but himself. He does not seek permission to act, nor does he fear the consequences of choosing his own path. The world rewards men who are free. The most powerful leaders, the most successful entrepreneurs, the most legendary warriors, they all understood that their time, their energy, their focus was their most valuable possession. They did not waste it on unnecessary attachments. They did not allow themselves to be tamed. They remained wild, untamed, relentless in their pursuit of something greater than comfort. And this is the truth most men do not want to hear. Love is a chain disguised as a gift. It is given freely, but once accepted, it binds you, it softens you. It makes you cautious, careful, hesitant. It makes you consider before every action not what is best for you, but what is best for the relationship. It makes you sacrifice the very thing that makes you powerful, your independence. The lone wolf is not lonely, he is free. Free to roam where he pleases. Free to hunt when he chooses. Free to move through the world without asking, without waiting, without explaining. This is the essence of masculine power, the ability to exist on one's own terms, without restriction, without limitation. Ask yourself, when was the last time you did exactly what you wanted, without compromise? When was the last time you pursued a goal without considering how it would affect someone else? When was the last time you felt truly free? If the answer is not right now, then you are still chained. But the chains are not real. They are not locked. You can remove them at any time. Most men are afraid to let go. They have been told that solitude is suffering, that being alone is a weakness, that a man is meant to be part of something, to belong to someone. But this is a lie. A man is not meant to belong. He is meant to conquer. When you embrace solitude, you reclaim your freedom. You stop waiting. You stop compromising. You stop deluding yourself to fit into a relationship that can never give you what you truly desire. Because what you truly desire is greatness, and greatness can only be achieved by the man who is truly free. Now, wisdom seekers, shall we continue? Benefit 3. Unstoppable growth. A man in solitude is a man in motion. He is a force that cannot be contained, a mind that is constantly expanding, a soul that is always reaching for more. Without the distractions of a relationship, he is free to dedicate himself fully to his own growth, physically, mentally, and spiritually. He is not limited by the demands of another, nor is he restrained by the invisible chains that tie so many men to stagnation. Instead, he moves forward relentlessly toward a version of himself that others can only dream of becoming. Growth is the natural state of the man who walks alone. While other men are spending their time navigating the emotional complexities of a relationship, he is reading, learning, training, and evolving. He does not waste his energy on arguments, on maintaining balance, on making endless compromises. His mind is free to absorb knowledge, his body is free to become stronger, and his will is free to sharpen itself against the trials of solitude. A relationship, by its very nature, slows down a man's progress. It pulls him away from his goals, little by little, in ways that are subtle at first, but undeniable over time. A man who once spent his nights reading now spends them on the phone. A man who once trained relentlessly now skips sessions to accommodate someone else's schedule. A man who once had a clear vision for his life now finds that vision clouded by the expectations of another. This is how growth is stolen, not all at once, but in small, unnoticed sacrifices that eventually amount to a life of compromise. The man who walks alone does not experience this. He has no distractions, no obligations, no need to explain himself to anyone. He is free to dive into the depths of his own potential, to push himself beyond his limits, to forge himself into something greater with each passing day. This is why the lone wolf always surpasses the domesticated ones. While they are comfortable, he is uncomfortable. While they rest, he grinds. While they seek validation, he seeks mastery. The great Stoic philosophers understood this deeply. Seneca, one of the wisest minds of his time, wrote that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And what is a greater waste of time than pouring energy into a relationship that does not elevate you? How many men have sacrificed their ambitions for love, only to look back in regret, realizing that they have spent years building something that was never truly theirs? A man without a relationship has limitless time to invest in himself. He can master a skill with an obsession that others will never understand. He can train his body with a level of discipline that most men will never reach. He can sharpen his mind through philosophy, strategy, and deep thought, free from the emotional turbulence that comes with attachment. This is why the greatest warriors, the most brilliant thinkers, the most powerful leaders chose solitude over companionship. They understood that to grow into something extraordinary, they had to detach from the ordinary. The world is filled with distractions, and relationships are among the greatest of them. They offer comfort, but at the price of progress. They offer security, but at the cost of ambition. They promise fulfillment, but they take away the one thing a man needs most, his edge. The edge that makes him powerful, the edge that makes him unstoppable, the edge that separates him from the masses. Think of the men who have achieved legendary status. Did Alexander the Great conquer the world by dedicating his time to love? Did Bruce Lee become a master by seeking comfort in relationships? Did Leonardo da Vinci create masterpieces by allowing his time to be consumed by romance? No. These men, and many like them, were driven by an unquenchable thirst for growth, a fire that could not be extinguished by temporary pleasure. They understood that every moment spent chasing love was a moment stolen from their greatness. And so the man who embraces solitude becomes a different breed. While others are focused on making someone else happy, he is focused on becoming a man worthy of admiration, power, and legacy. He does not wait for permission to improve, he takes action. He does not need motivation, he is discipline itself. He does not slow down, he accelerates, fueled by an inner force that grows stronger every day. This is why most men will never understand him. They will look at his solitude and mistake it for loneliness. They will see his detachment and call it coldness. They will not realize that he is not withdrawing, he is ascending. He is moving beyond the world of the ordinary, entering a realm where few men ever go. A place where true strength is built, where wisdom is gained, where mastery is forged. Growth is not something that happens by accident. It is the result of deliberate, focused action. And a man who is constantly navigating the complexities of a relationship will never have the time, energy, or clarity to pursue this action fully. He will always be splitting his attention, always balancing, always pulled in multiple directions. But the man who walks alone, he directs every ounce of his energy toward his evolution. He is not concerned with love. He is in love with progress, and so he rises, higher than others, faster than others, beyond others, until one day he looks back and realizes that he has become something that most men can never be, completely unstoppable. The choice is always yours, wisdom seekers. Stay in place, entangled in the web of relationships, or break free and step onto the path of limitless growth. And if you are ready for the next truth, let us continue. Benefit 4. Unmatched mental clarity. A man who walks alone sees the world differently. His mind is sharp, unclouded by emotions, free from the chaos that consumes those who are tied to others. Without the weight of a relationship pressing upon his thoughts, he can think with absolute clarity. His decisions are his own. His mind is undisturbed, and his focus is unbreakable. In a world where most men are distracted, he stands apart as a man of wisdom, precision, and control. Mental clarity is one of the rarest and most powerful states a man can achieve. It is what separates the great from the mediocre, the strong from the weak, the leaders from the followers. Yet most men will never experience it because they willingly allow themselves to be caught in the storm of emotions, expectations, and obligations that relationships bring. They live in a constant state of mental noise, overanalyzing conversations, worrying about their partner's feelings, navigating conflicts, and making compromises. Their minds are never truly their own, but the man who embraces solitude, he thinks in straight lines, not in circles. His thoughts are uninterrupted. He is not burdened by unnecessary concerns. He is not wasting his mental energy on trivial matters. Instead, his mind operates like a finely tuned weapon, sharp, efficient, deadly. He sees his goals with absolute clarity. He understands his purpose without hesitation. He moves through life like a strategist, calculating every move with precision, never distracted by the emotional turbulence that slows other men down. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, wrote extensively about controlling the mind, understanding that the quality of a man's thoughts determines the quality of his life. He believed that a man who could master his mind could master anything. Yet, how many men truly have control over their thoughts? How many live free from distraction, from doubt, from unnecessary emotions? The answer is almost none, Because most men never allow themselves to step away from the distractions that consume them. A relationship, by its very nature, is a breeding ground for mental clutter. It demands constant thought, constant attention, constant emotional engagement. The moment a man ties himself to another person, his mind is no longer fully his own. He must always consider, always adjust, always respond. Even when he is alone, he is not truly alone, because his thoughts are occupied by someone else. He carries their emotions, their expectations, their needs within his mind, whether he realizes it or not. And in doing so, he loses the purity of focus that makes a man truly powerful. But the man who walks alone, his mind is his fortress. He does not waste energy worrying about things that do not serve him. He does not spend hours replaying conversations, analyzing emotions, or questioning his worth based on another person's validation. He operates with brutal efficiency, seeing reality as it is, making decisions without hesitation, moving forward without second-guessing himself. His mind is unpolluted by distraction, free from unnecessary emotions, immune to the chaos that weakens other men. With this clarity comes unshakable confidence. A man who is free from the mental fog of relationships no longer seeks validation. He no longer second-guesses his choices. He no longer needs reassurance from someone else to feel whole. He understands himself deeply, knows what he wants, and moves toward it without hesitation. He becomes fearless, not because he is reckless, but because he sees reality clearly and knows exactly how to navigate it. And here lies the greatest secret. Most men are weak because they are mentally exhausted. They do not even realize it, but the constant emotional strain of relationships wears them down. It dulls their edge. It makes them reactive instead of proactive. It makes them uncertain instead of decisive. But the man who cuts these ties, who removes this unnecessary weight, suddenly finds himself with an incredible amount of mental energy. He sees solutions where others see problems. He sees opportunities where others see obstacles. He sees reality as it is, not as his emotions would like it to be. Nietzsche believed that the greatest men were those who could stand alone in their thoughts, free from the need for external validation. He saw dependence as a weakness, a sign that a man had not yet mastered himself. And he was right, because the moment a man detaches himself from relationships, he discovers a new level of mental power that others will never understand. This is why some men achieve greatness while others remain stagnant. The great men, thinkers, warriors, philosophers, leaders, were not distracted by love. They were focused, clear-headed, driven by a vision greater than themselves. They understood that the mind is the most powerful weapon a man possesses, and they refused to dull its edge by allowing unnecessary emotions to take root. A relationship demands space in your mind. Even in its best moments, it requires a level of emotional engagement that takes away from your ability to think freely, clearly, and effectively. And in its worst moments, it consumes you entirely. It fills your thoughts with anxiety, with uncertainty, with self-doubt. It turns your mind into a battlefield of emotions, leaving you too weak to focus on what truly matters. But the man who chooses solitude, his mind remains untouched. He is free to think, to strategize, to plan, to execute. He does not waste his mental energy on things that do not serve him. He does not allow himself to be consumed by unnecessary emotions. He is in control, not just of his actions, but of his entire being. And so he rises, not as a man trapped in the confusion of love, but as a man who has conquered himself. Mental clarity is a gift that most men will never experience. They will spend their lives lost in the fog of emotions, unable to think clearly, unable to act decisively. But for the man who walks alone, the world becomes clear. His path is undeniable, his decisions are final, his power is absolute. And when you reach this level of clarity, you realize a truth that shakes the very foundation of everything you once believed. Most people are lost, distracted, weak. And you? You are not like them. Are you ready to rise even further, wisdom seekers? Then let's continue. Benefit 5. Unbreakable discipline. A man without a relationship is a man without excuses. He wakes up and his day belongs entirely to him. There's no one asking for his time, no one expecting his attention, no distractions pulling him away from his mission. He is left alone with his choices, and in that solitude, he is forced to either become stronger or fall into weakness. The absence of a relationship creates a powerful environment, one where discipline either thrives or dies. And the man who chooses to master himself in this solitude becomes unstoppable. Discipline is the foundation of all greatness. No man has ever achieved anything of real significance without it. Talent is nothing without discipline. Intelligence is wasted without discipline. Strength is useless without discipline. It is the force that separates the conquerors from the conquered, the leaders from the followers, the extraordinary from the ordinary. And yet, in a relationship, discipline is constantly under attack. A man who is tied to another person is always negotiating his time, energy, and focus. He is constantly balancing his own priorities with the expectations of someone else. He is making small compromises, skipping a workout to stay in bed, delaying his work to entertain a conversation, choosing comfort over the grind. These compromises seem insignificant at first, but over time they erode his discipline. They soften him. They turn him into a man who was once sharp but is now dulled by comfort. But the man who stands alone has no one to please, no one to adjust for, no one to pull him away from the path. His time belongs to him, and in that ownership, discipline has the space to grow into something unshakable. He wakes up early, not because he has to, but because he chooses to. He trains, studies, works, not because someone is watching, but because it is who he is. He does not need external motivation because he has built the internal fire of self-discipline, a fire that does not flicker or die, a fire that fuels him day after day. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus taught that self-control is the highest form of power a man can achieve. He believed that true freedom comes not from doing whatever one wants, but from mastering one's own desires, emotions, and impulses. And what better way to build this mastery than through solitude? When a man is alone, he is fully responsible for himself. There is no external force to blame, no partner to lean on, no distractions to use as an excuse. It is just him and his willpower. This is why the lone man achieves more. His discipline is not interrupted by emotional turbulence. He is not skipping workouts because of late-night arguments. He is not neglecting his craft because of relationship drama. He is not delaying his goals because of someone else's timeline. His life is structured by his own decisions, and in that structure, he builds the habits of absolute mastery. Most men fail to reach their potential because they are too comfortable. They seek pleasure over purpose. They want validation more than victory. They choose love over legacy. But the man who chooses solitude steps into a different mindset. He understands that discipline is a form of self-respect, and nothing disrespects a man more than allowing himself to be weakened by distraction. When you are alone, you are tested. No one is watching. No one is forcing you to do the hard things. No one is holding you accountable. It is in this space that true discipline is forged. The weak will fail. They will allow themselves to become lazy, unfocused, and undisciplined. But the strong will rise. They will build routines that turn them into machines of progress. They will develop self-control that makes them immune to temptation. They will master their time, their energy, and their will, until discipline is no longer something they practice, it is something they are. And when a man reaches this level, he becomes something different. He moves through the world with an aura of power. Others notice it. They see it in the way he walks, in the way he speaks, in the way he carries himself. He does not need to prove himself. His presence alone is proof. Because true discipline does not just shape the body, it shapes the mind, the soul, the very essence of who a man is. This is why the most disciplined men are often the most respected. They have control over themselves. And in a world where most men are controlled by their emotions, their desires, and their relationships, this control is rare. A disciplined man is a dangerous man because he cannot be manipulated. He does not seek approval. He does not fall into weakness. He does not stray from his mission. He is focused, relentless, and completely independent. But achieving this level of discipline requires sacrifice. It requires walking away from comfort. It requires choosing the hard path over the easy one. It requires accepting solitude not as a burden, but as a gift, a space where you can build yourself into something greater than the world has ever seen. And so the question becomes, are you willing to walk that path? Are you willing to step away from distraction, to let go of comfort, to embrace the solitude that will forge you into something unbreakable? Most men are not. Most men will never know what it feels like to wake up every day with absolute control over themselves. Most men will never feel the power of true discipline because they are too afraid to let go of the things that weaken them. But you are not most men. You are here because you seek something greater. You are here because you know that discipline is the key to mastery, success, and ultimate freedom. And if you are ready for the next level, wisdom seekers, let us continue. Benefit 6. Immense freedom. There is no greater freedom than the freedom that comes with being fully independent. A man who is without a relationship lives with a kind of freedom that most will never understand. He is not bound by the expectations of another person, not tied to the schedule or emotions of someone else. He owns his time, his decisions, his life. In the absence of another person's needs, desires, or limitations, he is free to roam the world, free to pursue his vision, and free to carve out a path that is uniquely his own. This is the paradox of relationships. The more deeply one becomes involved with another, the more constrained one becomes. Freedom is exchanged for obligation. The man who once roamed freely, unburdened by ties, is now beholden to another's happiness, another's plans, another's expectations. He is no longer his own. He is constantly shifting, adjusting, and compromising. And in that compromise, the price of freedom is paid. But the man who chooses to remain free from relationships, he does not suffer this loss. His days belong to him, his mind is his own, and his decisions are shaped by nothing other than his inner desires. He can choose where he goes, when he goes, and why he goes, without having to answer to anyone. He is free from the weight of explaining himself, of justifying his actions, of navigating the complex emotional landscapes that relationships inevitably create. He is completely unencumbered, living as a master of his own destiny. This kind of freedom is intoxicating. It is the freedom of being able to act without hesitation, to move forward without waiting for approval, to pursue the things that truly matter to you without fear of judgment. The world becomes an open field, and you are free to run, to explore, to create. There are no constraints, no obligations, only the call of your own ambitions and desires. In many ways, this is the ultimate form of freedom. It is the kind of freedom that allows a man to discover who he truly is, to explore his potential without limitation. He is not tied to a partnership that demands emotional investment or sacrifices. He is free to pursue his own purpose, free to dedicate himself fully to his passions, free to grow in any direction he chooses. He does not have to divide his attention, divide his energy, or divide his focus between the needs of someone else and his own needs. His life is his own to shape. And in that freedom, he becomes limitless. Think of the greatest men in history, those who accomplished feats that seem impossible to the average person. Did they have their time consumed by relationship drama? Were they distracted by the emotional needs of a partner? Were they slowed down by the demands of a family or a significant other? No, they were free to pursue their own purpose without hesitation, without compromise. They were free to focus completely on their craft, their mission, their legacy. And this is the essential truth. Freedom is not just about doing what you want when you want. It is about being free from the distractions, from the obligations, from the weight of others' expectations. It is about having the space and the time to focus completely on the things that matter to you. It is about being able to create your own life without interference. The man who walks alone is in total command of his life, and that level of autonomy is what gives him the strength to rise above the masses. This freedom extends to all areas of life: career, health, travel, creativity. A man who is unencumbered by the needs of a partner can dedicate himself to his work with a level of focus and determination that most will never experience. He can make decisions based on his vision for the future, not based on the compromises required in a relationship. He can invest his time and energy into personal growth because he is not forced to divide it between his own desires and the demands of another person. He can live life on his own terms, without ever having to worry about letting someone down, without feeling the weight of obligation pressing upon him. This level of freedom is also a form of empowerment. It is the ability to create your life without having to justify it. It is the ability to make choices without having to explain them. It is the ability to walk through life with your head held high, knowing that every decision you make is your own. There is no one telling you what to do, no one placing limitations on your dreams. You are free to act, to choose, to create, and that power is something most people will never know. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher and emperor, understood this deeply. He knew that true freedom is not something given to you by the outside world. It is something you must cultivate within yourself. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." A man who is free from the expectations of a relationship has the ultimate power over his own life. He has the freedom to shape his destiny, to focus on his goals, and to live according to his own values and desires. He does not need permission to be himself. He is fully himself, every day. There is no greater form of self-mastery than to be free of distractions and obligations, and to live entirely by your own rules. The man who chooses solitude creates this level of freedom for himself. He is not bound by anything other than his own will, and that gives him a power that others will never understand. True freedom is not given to you. It is earned through mastery, and the man who masters himself in solitude has earned it fully. He is free from the chains of emotional dependency, free from the obligations of pleasing others, free to create his own path, and free to live according to his own vision. This is the kind of freedom that allows men to build legacies. This is the kind of freedom that allows men to rise above mediocrity. This is the kind of freedom that creates extraordinary lives, not just ordinary ones. And as a wisdom seeker, you are already on the path toward that freedom. So, ask yourself, are you ready to embrace the immense freedom that comes from walking alone? Are you ready to shape your life exactly as you choose, free from the distractions and compromises that come with relationships? The choice is yours, and the path to unimaginable freedom is waiting.